Okay, we're back after a week's vacation. We're going to start off with, we're not going to do any intros here this time. We're going to be very serious about this. We're going to start off with the pennant race and the big time for all times. We're going to start off with Kurt specifically because the Mets did take a loss today. They did shore up their bullpen during the trade deadline, but the trade deadline's now a week and a half gone, a month and a half gone. So they're 5 over 500. They're holding on to a 2 game lead due to a San Francisco loss yesterday. With the Giants being idle today, they still hold that 2 game lead over them. Kurt, how are you feeling right now with the Mets?
Sick to my stomach. It's actually a game and a half lead now with the Mets losing tonight. The Mets hold the tiebreaker over the Giants, but the Reds hold the tiebreaker over the Mets. If it comes down to a tie between the Reds and the Giants, I'm looking at an article that says there's still too many factors because they tied in the regular season series. Um, I mean, in some ways, it may not matter much because in the first round, it's likely whichever team wins is going to Dodgers, and they'll probably wind up getting clobbered. Or I would say at this point that's what it's going to be because right now, Milwaukee and Philadelphia pretty much have their divisions wrapped up. So we'll have to see what happens, but it's not looking good for the Mets right now. Looking at the American League, um, there are still some teams with a shot at it. I can't believe Texas still has a chance. Cleveland's on a winning streak. They might catch back up to it, but I'm sure some other guys have opinions on that.
That's why I like these late season heroics and everything else because it's more or less, I know for a fact that the two best records in the American League right now are shared by two division winners, the Blue Jays and the Tigers. And I saw this old comic strip. It's from, it was somebody pulling the calendar down when their coworker says, "Oh, the Tigers are doing good this year." It said like September 1984. That's how long. That's how often the Tigers are good, but they haven't won a ring since '84, if I remember right. So it's been 41 years for them now, but been a bit of time. But I think the Mets will, they'll hold on for dear life at this point. I was going to go to Josh, but unfortunately his internet gave other plans. I am going to go to Brandon next, and then I'll go to Jesse. And when Josh comes back, I'll let him talk about the pennant race. But for the most part, I'm going to let Brandon talk about where the White Sox are right now. I know they're not in the playoffs, but
They're not in the playoffs, but there is a lot of positivity to be spread right now because since August 31st, the White Sox are 9-2, which is the best stretch right now in baseball. They just took 2 out of 3 from the Tampa Bay Rays, who are trying to fight for a playoffs or no, they're a couple games under 500. Excuse me. They were in it for a while, but then they kind of fell out of it. But still, to beat a team like that and to get on this little run that we've been going on has been really, really positive to see. And last night, especially, the bullpen was absolutely spectacular. Finishing off that game against the Rays, we won 6-5. And now we're going into a weekend series in Cleveland with the Guardians, who are fighting for that third wild card spot right now in the American League. Obviously, we're not going to the playoffs. We are eliminated along with the Rockies, but we can definitely play spoiler, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. And we only have to win 8 more games, and we avoid a 100-loss season, and I think that's even more of a positive.
well, that's all you can really ask for. And at this point, 8 more games is a lot more than anybody expected. But just going over the wild card standings, the fact that Seattle's now in second place due to everything that's gone on with Texas recently. I know Johnny already talked to me and he said he wasn't going to be here this evening, but I am going to talk to Jesse about Houston. Houston, do they have a problem right now with the Mariners, who've been scorching hot this last month? They've won 5 straight.
Only
The
a half
Rangers,
game behind Houston.
yeah,
Yep.
it's very much turning into. Do you sound the alarm now that the Astros have kind of fallen off a little bit when this division was won?
Yeah, their fault. I mean, some of the losses have, like the losses, some of them have been just a couple have been a blowout, which is scary to think about, And then we have pitchers that are just constantly hurt and not healthy. Lance McCullers is a shell of his former self. Luis Garcia just returned and he ended up having to leave the game. So where does that leave the Stros? They just lost 6-0 to the Blue Jays, who are right now on the top of the Yankees in the East. I mean, the Astros would be lucky to make the playoffs this year if they can't get it together.
I see them holding on as well because I think with the way the rest of the season goes, for all these teams, Chicago, the Cubs, I think they've had a long history of having to deal with stretches where they're really good or they're not. But at this point, how do I put this bluntly? They would need an absolute collapse. And don't quote me on that, but they would need to have the bottom fall out, absolutely just completely fall apart, being 7.5 up through game 146 for them. Yes, there's 16 games left, but historically, I think the good karma for them is they had Rizzo retire as a Cub. That's my thing after him not playing in 2025. Sadly, his lasting image is him holding on to that baseball in last year's World Series because Garrett Cole didn't move his ass to first base and catch that flip on the Mookie Betts ground ball. But I do have a bone to pick with Framber Valdez. He legitimately and on purpose almost injured his catcher the other day after a grand slam.
I remember that.
My problem with that is if you shake off your catcher and your catcher doesn't want you to deliver a fastball, if you saw where this fastball was, it was almost right down the heart of the plate. And I forget who hit the grand slam, but it was not a cheapie. Guy teed off on the ball, and then immediately the next pitch, guy calls for a slider. The catcher calls for a slider. Framber Valdez throws him a fastball. It hits him right in the wrist, the catcher.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, what the hell?
There's a difference between a cross-up and being an ass to your catcher. That guy, and I quote Crash Davis, "Don't shake me off, meat. I've got all this experience. Don't shake me off." And that's just it. Crash Davis in Bull Durham, I know that was a movie, but he made sure that batter knew where that next pitch was coming. Because you got to respect the guy behind the plate because he's the one who helps you win and helps you succeed. Don't disrespect your catcher. And even Espada, Joe Espada, who's the manager of the Astros, didn't handle it well. Because if you're having infighting with your players, no wonder you're only half a game up. You can't have these guys be fighting. But that's it for the pennant race for now. But I do believe the Mets have the strongest schedule going forward. They have the strongest schedule that they have to face. And interestingly enough, they have a 3-game set after today, starting against Texas, an off day on the 15th, and then they face San Diego for a couple games as well. So those are really big matchups coming up, for the Mets at least. Houston, they face a struggling, and I mean struggling Atlanta Braves team going into that next series. So I feel like if the Mets can beat Texas in that series, at least win 2 out of 3. Don't sweep them, but at least win 2 out of 3. Because the only 2 teams they have to worry about are the Giants and the Reds. The Astros, they got to worry about the guy with the guys with the tridents, and they got to worry about the Rangers. But if the Mets could help them out and beat Texas, that's the big one there. Yeah. But we are going to go over expansion now. Expansion has happened many different times in baseball. The most recent one was 1998 with the not the Colorado Rockies. Oh my God, where's my head?
Diamondbacks and the
Diamondbacks and the Tampa Bay Devil Rays at the time. So that was 27 years ago. A lot was different. Bonds wasn't in the home run chase at the time. It was Sosa, it was McGwire. It was 4 years after the baseball strike. But here's the thing, and I want to hear your guys' sentiment on this, and I'll let you each have your time on this. This is going to be 28 years after the last expansion for Major League Baseball. There's a potential strike happening next season with the MLBPA being up again after what happened in 2020, where they had the strikes shortened season and they couldn't agree with anything. With the thought of all these big contracts and everything else, and guys like Anthony Rendon not finishing out their contracts, do you feel like expansion is going to help or hurt the game? Brandon, I'm going to start with you about it. Do you think this expansion with the to 32 teams is going to help or hurt the game?
It's going to definitely help the game, especially for a city like Nashville and a city like Portland. Portland really has been they've only had one team for most of their existence, the Portland Trailblazers. And I actually remember doing a project when I was a senior in high school in a sports marketing class where we had to create a team for a city, and we actually created a baseball team for the city of Portland. So it's going to bring in a lot of revenue for that city. It's going to bring in a lot of revenue for Nashville, especially since there's a lot to do in that city. And to not just have a football team, but to also have a baseball team there, it's going to be great. And again, it's going to bring in a lot of money for not just those cities, but for the league as well. So I'm anticipating expansion, and I actually do want more expansion in baseball.
I like what you're saying, and I know, and to add on to that so you can have a little bit more here, they're also trying to do realignment where they're going to have each team be in their own division where it's actually going to be location-wise. So will the realignment along with the expansion, you feel, will it help? Because that means teams like the A's, the Giants, the Padres, and all of them, like location-wise, are going to be scrunched into a different division. Do you think that's going to affect the rivalry aspect of it all?
Most certainly, especially from a fan base, the tribalism is going to be even crazier. It's like when you talk about the Cubs and the Sox being in the same division, that would be completely insane. And the A's and the Giants, they've met in the World Series before years ago, and for them to be in the same division, that's going to be crazy. So, yeah, it's definitely going to have a big impact on the rivalries and on the fan bases.
So just to go back to what we're talking about, and I'll get to you guys in a moment. So this is what they want, and I'll share screen so you guys can see it, because this is what they're going to want for relocation and everything else. They want the AL East is going to be 4 teams, so it's going to be Yankees, Red Sox, Orioles, Blue Jays. They're going to come up with the AL North. So the Central is gone, basically, with this new alignment. And it's going to be White Sox, Twins, Tigers, Guardians. AL West is going to be the Angels, the Mariners, the Athletics, and a new team, probably Portland or Salt Lake City. The South will be the Rangers, Astros, Royals, and Rockies, which I don't think is correct. That makes no sense geographically. But and then you're going to have there's just going to be no more of the no more Central, basically. No more AL or NL Central. But in my mind, I don't know. I think it's worse for the league, but I feel better if it's Portland because, like you said, Portland's only had one team, but I think they have a minor league team, Portland does. I think they have the Portland Sea Dogs still.
Yeah, they do.
So they have a small fan base, but I think they might be ready for the big jump. But I am going to go to the elder statesman with respect. Kurt, you've been around I don't want to go aging you here, but I'm sure you've been around for the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So
I don't remember 1969, but I remember all the other ones.
So 77 was the first one that you remember. So as we're getting now, the there's been expansion during the 70s, and the 90s. There was nothing in the 80s, but how do you feel this is going to affect the current thing with the realignment and everything in the expansion for baseball?
You're going to see for the next cut, if you see expansion at that, you're going to see run scoring going up for a couple of years because the pitching will be diluted as it all diluted, not diluted, as it always is. So that will excite some fans. And the interesting thing is the last two expansions, with the possible exception of the Rays, usually teams were pretty good about bringing in star players right off the bat. They weren't sitting back and saying, well, you got to wait for these young guys to develop like Toronto and Seattle did. And Toronto and Seattle had awful, awful teams for
a few
years. In fact, if you look at expansion teams, the only two that were, excluding the more recent ones, say like Arizona, who had a miraculous run early on, that were any good right off the bat. The Angels had a couple of good years, their first few, because frankly, the American League was in a rush to expand in 1960. They didn't protect enough players, so a fair number of good players got over to California. And the Kansas City Royals, their third year, they went 86 and 76. Now, they were in kind of a weak division in the AL West, but they had amazing pitching that year and just enough hitting to make it work. That said, I mean, I'll be interested to see how things go. I was very interested to see that division setup that you put on the board, Joey. I think the more you put it into geographical locations, the less interested people are going to be, especially with the Western Division in the East and vice versa. In New York, nobody's going to sit up to be watching a game at 1 o'clock in the morning between Portland and Seattle. It's just not going to happen.
No, and that's just the biggest thing that I see is because I think Salt Lake City's in Nevada, but my biggest issue with it right now is with the A's possibly going to Vegas in 2028. You're going to have two teams in Nevada then, and that screws up your Western Division right away, just right away.
Well, Salt Lake's in Utah. I get your point.
Yeah, but still, geologically, you're going to have two teams just like right there. They're never going to have to travel. And of course, one of the upsides was supposed to be reduced travel. But I don't have the utmost faith that Rob Manfred can do his job right. But another thing is, I just looked it up. It's historically bad how bad expansion teams have been. It's been, and I found this out, and I've known this, 64 years of expansion teams since 1961. The most wins in their first year, no team has gone 500 as an expansion team. No team has come close. The most wins by the Los Angeles. This was when they first started. They were called the Los Angeles Angels, not of Anaheim, not the Anaheim Angels, not the California Angels, not the log jam of a name they had. They won 70 games that year. They went 70 and 92. That was when the first, because back in 61 was the first time they experimented with the full 162 games. 1960, when Mazeroski ended the season, after that they said we're going to add 8 more games to the schedule, and that's just it. Is 32 teams in 162 games. You're trying to shrink this. You're trying to shrink the length of a game, but all this travel and everything else, I think that's really going to change the game for the better and for the worse, because speeding up baseball games is going to be a big problem with these extra 2 teams. But I digress. Josh, you haven't got a chance to talk at all because of your internet. So I'm going to give you ample time here, and then I'll get to Jesse. We're talking about expansion teams here. They're going to, with 2 new teams, get rid of the Central Division in both leagues if it comes to pass. They're going to replace it with the AL and NL North, which I don't understand because realistically, as a fan of football and baseball, when you're taking away the Central, you're essentially turning this into football light. And I don't have a solid opinion on that.
Totally 100% agree with you there, Joey. And I saw a little bit of the graphic that you put up as I was coming back in. I don't think it's going to work. If you remove the Central Division in both areas, in National and American League, it's going to mess everything up. And I mean, expansion teams have their place, but I don't know why they want to start all these expansion teams and
just so you can get another look at it.
Do what they're doing. Why I caught the tail end of it. So
oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Stupid thing won't show up. There we go. But no, that should be what it's. They want to add, and the one thing I see wrong with it is they put Tampa Bay in the National League, and I think there's basically swapping the Rockies and the Rays for the AL and NL South. That's just the way it is, and that's not something I find.
And I don't know whose brainchild was this, supposedly.
I don't know, but this is what they want. Oh, no. Here's something I don't like either. The schedule changes with the different structure. They want to shrink that to 156 games. So they're going to take away 6 games for less interdivisional matchups.
But didn't they a few years ago, if I recall, they wanted more interleague play, and now they're trying to get rid of it?
Like I said, and I'm sure you guys know this toy, but every time I think about Rob Manfred and what goes on in his head, I think about that monkey with the cymbals and the big old teeth out and everything else. Just the clap, 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 clap. Kind of like the Energizer Bunny hitting the drum. I swear to God, the hamster's on the wheel. Unfortunately, it's been dead for 15 years. Good Lord.
No, I'm in total agreement with you here, Joey. I don't like this at all. At all.
And another thing is, it's not about whether or not expansion's a good thing or a bad thing. It's the fact that they're willing to take such desperate measures to try and keep baseball interesting, I feel, and they're going overboard.
Well, and you know this as well. Baseball has turned into one big marketing gimmick,
and that's the biggest problem. Is I don't know if you guys watched the All-Star game this year. It's turned into where it doesn't go into extra innings because of what happened back in 2002 with the Milwaukee Brewers, where they ran out of pitchers and everything else, and it ended in a tie. They don't want to go through that again. But the biggest thing is, why a home run derby? I don't they just had the home run derby before. It's just like, oh yeah, each team gets their best guy to hit 3. They get 3 swing. They each get a swing, and if they get an out, that's it. But they get 3 swings, and of course the National League won because of Christ. I don't even remember who it was. That's how dumb.
Schwarber.
So Schwarber hits 50 home runs this season after all that, but my biggest thing is this: why are there so many gimmicks all of a sudden? I swear to God.
And they use gimmicks to get people to watch it on TV. They have so many gimmicks to get people in the ballpark. People watch baseball because it's baseball, not because of whatever gimmick you're throwing at them.
And that's just it. I think expansion has finally turned into, well, it's finally gotten spoiled in my opinion, but that's just what I think. I think they finally spoiled the sport. And that's the one that David's showing, but this is the one that they're trying to propose. So the NL Midwest, the AL Northeast, NL Central, AL Mid-Atlantic, which that rolls off the tongue. It's really stupid at this point. And then the AL Great Lakes division. So they're pretty much just taking the territories and just throwing them like, you know, the game Yahtzee. It feels like they're throwing them in a big old one of the cups and then just rolling the dice all of a sudden. It's like they're gambling away the future. But if you have anything else to add, Josh.
No, sir, that about covers it. I'm not really thrilled with this new setup they're going to try to use.
See, I just find this whole thing stupid. Jesse, I'd like to get your 2 cents on it. I think
I think
David's the
it's
one who was sharing that image.
yeah, it looks stupid because then you're putting the Astros back where they were back in in the NL Central. You know, the only difference is they're a different set of teams. It makes no sense. It's like with the that's the way the NBA does it. You know, the NBA has there's certain their divisions with teams.
I-
It's just it's
I just find the whole thing demeaning to people because it's like I've said before at my job, don't make people feel stupider if they shouldn't have to, because this is simplifying it, but simplifying is different from making it more clear, like knowing more about it. And that's the biggest problem is it's oversimplification for a baseball league that's been around since the 1870s.
yeah.
For
It's like
almost for I think it's no, not quite 200 years, but since 1876, which was well over 150, it's going to be 150 years next year that baseball's been around. Next year's its 150th anniversary. How bad are you planning on screwing this up that next year you may not have a ceremony for that celebration? All in all, I think they're more consumed with the fact that they let Shohei Otani, and I know I'm getting off track with this, but here's my thing. David, can you take down the alignment thing for a moment, please? Thank you. But my thing is this, and this is gonna be the last little thing. And David, we are gonna go over on this one. We are gonna go over time, and that's okay. But my biggest thing is this: payroll. Payroll is gonna be the next biggest thing because expansion teams, since expansion has become a thing, because I'm gonna go back to 1998 and I want to see what the payrolls are from them, from that. Because I want to just payrolls for each team because this is almost 30 years ago for each team, just in general. Because I'm going to go to the baseball queue. The highest paid player and the highest payrolls and everything else. Yeah, from the to the basement from the porch, exactly. Because this is back when, at the height of the steroid era, 1998, right before the whole thing with Barry Bonds and everything else. No, I don't want to download that. Get that away. But the league minimum back then was under $200,000. Whoops. Hold on. Make sure. What am I doing wrong here? Please work. There we go. Finally. But Cy Young Award winner and everything else. He earned Greg Maddux was earning $9.6 million that year. Payroll was Baltimore, and I don't even think they made the playoffs that year. So, just to put it bluntly, the highest payroll was Baltimore, and they went 79 and 83. Mussina was making 19 million, but these are all the expansion teams and everything else. So, the lowest payroll was a team that lost almost 100 games. But you look at the expansion teams here. You have the Devil Rays, who are at $25,317,500. They went 63 and 99, finished in last place. They were 29 out of 30. The worst team in baseball that year, and the year before that, their payroll would have been 37 million. Fred McGriff was their highest paid player then. And then Arizona finished with two more wins, but still went last place. Theirs was under 30 million. Compared to the teams that won 100 games, they were on. This is just when it was different. Because the more I look at it, the more I find it just incredible how bad it was. But 106 and 56, and their payroll was 60 million. $70 million back then is the equivalent now of 1 year of Otani's contract without the deferments. So my biggest question here is, I'm going to compare it to this year. Well, I can do that here anyways, but let's see. Nope, not that. Payroll by team, select season 2025. The highest payroll now, 330 million, 331 million. Top salary is Juan Soto. Lowest payroll almost eclipses the entire league by less than 2 million. And that's this year. This is Florida, Miami, whatever you want to call them. And they started out back in 1993. 32 years later, an expansion team has the lowest payroll in baseball. And Miami is not competing. But here's the thing. Just to show something, these are the top 100 salaries in baseball this year. Number one, Juan Soto at 121 million. 68 million. So almost twice over for Soto. He's making his own. He could own the Marlins and then some right now. So this is what I mean, but I don't think baseball has a salary cap, does it?
No,
No.
that's been the big issue. This is
And
one of
that's
the
just
reasons
it.
why I'm nervous about expansion, because especially Central Division teams generally pay a lot less than those on the coasts. I'm looking at the numbers from Spot Track, I'm sorry. And for last year, of the bottom 13 teams, eight of them were in the AL or NL Central.
Well, the thing is,
that's going to lead to teams not being competitive in the postseason.
and that's exactly it, because the Cubs, when the Cubs were competing, their highest paid players were Rizzo or Baez, but now, especially with the White Sox, and that's my biggest thing is Reinsdorf finally sold the team, but that was his biggest issue was with Jerry Reinsdorf being the owner of the White Sox still and them being as bad as they were. Bad ownership is really what's going to cause a problem, because I think about it this way. They have to pay to buy these teams now. So my last thing for you guys to think about, and you guys can just tell me what you think, is ownership-wise. Do you think, because most of these teams have lasted for as long as they have, but how much do you think it's going to cost for a team to be successful, especially not just in Nashville, because Nashville's got the music capital of the world. They don't have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but that's where it's a music city and it's a big city. But if you're thinking about a town like Portland, where it's in Oregon and everything else, there's no sales tax. There's none. So that's going to go a lot farther than in Nashville, where I think the sales tax is like 7 or 8%. So that's where I think the salary cap has to be instituted, because the luxury tax is one thing, but there has to be an outright salary cap like there is in the NFL. That's just the way I feel about it, but I don't know what you guys think. Just the salary cap. Do you think it's going to be worth doing it?
I think putting a salary cap in baseball would definitely stop teams from stacking star players as much as they do. That's why the NBA did that other tax thing, and that's why the Boston Celtics had to sell off all their players so they wouldn't get hit with that penalty. So, these leagues are trying to stop stacking players, for them to chase a ring.
Well, that's my biggest thing is I've never liked the fact that no matter what I've done, no matter what games I've played, I didn't go for the highest paid player, because I know one thing and one thing only. The second they get old, the skills deteriorate, you basically have a fossil playing the infield. That's why when I think about the Astros specifically right now, Christian Walker's struggling at the age of 34. Abreu made all that money at 35. But they had Yuli Gurriel, who's with the Miami Marlins, I think, or Toronto, one of those teams, and he's had a resurgence. But at what point do you not have like that aging guy, because when I think of an aging player who stayed around for too long and cost too much money, Alex Rodriguez when he was with the Yankees at the end of his run, as he got older, as the steroids and everything, the full season suspensions. Because in my eyes, any team could win when they're an expansion team, but it's teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees specifically, and the Padres being my number 3, because the Yankees have always been the team that gets the big contract. But if there's one team I wish, and I know it's not right to say it because they had Tony Gwynn, and Tony Gwynn was the greatest. He was a great humanitarian and a great player. But San Diego is one of the more overrated franchises. I feel like they could do so much better right now. They've got Machado's contract. They've got Bogarts' contract. They've got Tatis Jr.'s contract. They have 3 albatrosses hung around their necks right now. And sooner than later, they're going to have to cut bait. But other than that, if you guys have anything else to add, I'm whatever you'd like. It's the number one thing.
100%. I think they're going to.
Go ahead, Josh.
They're going to have to do a salary cap. They're going to have to do a salary cap because that's the only way you're going to, I think, stop some of these players for going after the money instead of for the. I don't know. Maybe I'm a nostalgist, but all these athletes, I don't care what sport you're playing in, basketball, baseball, football, whatever it is, they're all going after the big ticket and the money.
And that's where I've kind of.
And a salary cap would stop that.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you guys, I've been a fan for a long time. Not as long as Kurt has, obviously. He's been a fan of baseball longer than I've been alive, and I'm the second youngest here behind Brandon. But here's the thing. As someone who's been around for now 4 decades, 3.5 decades now, going into my 3rd actual decade, but I've always looked out for the fans when I've been playing video games. If somebody wants too much money, or unless they're a guy who's been around like a Tony Baselli when he played for the Jaguars and everything else, if they're a fan favorite, I always would give him an extra contract and everything else because that's what they want. That was the guy who would always stay, like a Keith Hernandez after he came from St. Louis to play for the Mets. He was considered a fan favorite because of that mustache. One of the greatest feeling first basemen I've ever seen. But see, it's the guys who played for the love of the game. That is what is lost on baseball now. The dollar has become too much of a problem because the more I think about it, the more sad it's become. Because especially when I think about a guy who stayed around and then got kicked to the curb when something was wrong. I go back 20 years ago to the Chicago White Sox. Right after they win the World Series. Frank Thomas and Kenny Williams. Frank Thomas is older. He was injured for most of 2005. Kenny Williams did not want him around anymore. They pretty much severed ties. Frank Thomas playing for the White Sox from 1990 until 2005. He played 16 seasons for one team. And that was just it. Played for 16 years with one team. He wanted to retire in Chicago after that World Championship. Very funny, David. But what happened was he wanted to retire a White Sox, but then Kenny Williams pretty much kicked him to the curb and said horrible things about the Big Hurt. And that pissed him off. So he went and signed for the league minimum in Oakland. 448 home runs, by the way. That's the most White Sox has ever had. He goes and has a 39 home run season in Oakland, finishes top 5 in MVP voting. They end up getting Jim Thome after the fact. Nicest guy, but it's just like you can't replace somebody like that. That'd be like getting rid of Ripken, like if the Orioles were mad enough to get rid of Cal Ripken, or if the Padres got rid of Tony Gwynn. But, and I know we're approaching 40 minutes here, and I've been doing a majority of the talking, and I apologize about that. But the fan favorite is slowly dying away. The hometown hero. It's not there anymore. And it's slowly turning into the narcissistic athlete. And it's funny that I talk about this because there was a guy who was in baseball for years. And they have him all over the place now. But this guy, he was in the A's dugout for the longest time. He was a sports psychologist. I forget his name, though. He was in Jamie Moyer's book that I read. But he told him, it's all about getting out of your own head. Because that's what happened with Canseco. Canseco was a head case. His brother was a head case. You don't want those guys around, but you want guys who can actually think for themselves and who sign every autograph, who try their best for their team, and don't expect big money. But now baseball is so spoiled by these rancid money contracts. That's the problem. Money has become a toxic word in baseball. That's why when expansion comes around, and I would love this. I would honestly love this. In the expansion draft, leave one of those really rich guys. Like Ohtani, like Devers, Bogarts, Betts, Freeman. And Freddie Freeman's one of the nicest guys in baseball. I shouldn't say that. But leave one of those guys that's worth all that money exposed to the expansion draft. Make him start back from nothing as a guy who makes league minimum. What do you think that would do to their self-esteem? Make them go back to making league minimum, which is only about $1.5 million this year now. It's gone way up, but make them sign for league minimum somewhere. And that's my
I don't think their egos would allow them to do that, though. So,
Yeah.
well, I think that would be a good experiment, though. Make that big money guy sign for league minimum when the expansion team. Watch his ego kill him. Because they wouldn't be able to do it. But I think that'd be a great idea. Make that guy play for the 1.5 million instead of the 60, 70. I'd like to see Soto play for his rookie contract again. That really small amount. Just watch it happen. 120 million down to 1.5 million. Just watch because that whole thing in Boston too, where he was not hustling out of the box on the ball off the wall. That's just the way I see it. But it was another good show, guys. As always, thank you for being around. Thank you for listening to me ramble a little bit. But thank you for another episode of the Weekly Baseball Rundown. Have a wonderful evening. And hopefully the Astros, the Cubs, the Mets, and the White Sox finish the season strong. And please, Lord help me if the Rockies do eventually finish this season with 120 losses, because they are 40 and 106 now. If they keep losing and they lose out the next 16 games and finish 40 and 122, I will buy a Rockies hat just to watch it burn. I'm sorry, but that is pathetic. That is when you talk about bad ownership. And I was just talking positive about them selling out every game the other day, just about, with a 40-win team. There's passion and then there's stupidity. Unfortunately, history, I forget the term, but history's only born to repeat itself when you keep expecting a different outcome and the same result happens. Because it's like they're hitting their heads against a brick wall, it seems. Like that must hurt.
The term is, Joey, those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it.
Well, Brandon, I mean this in the nicest way possible, but I think the playbook should have been thrown out after what happened last year with Chicago. I really do. Because, how do we put this bluntly? The worst player on that team was a World Series champion, a Rookie of the Year, and an MVP in his career. Chris Bryant's making $27 million, and he hasn't been on the field for more than half the season. He's making Anthony Rendon look good. And I don't like him either. That's a guy. He hurt. We're going to talk about prima donnas next week. That's it. We're talking about prima donnas next week. Prima donnas in baseball, because now I've had enough. I've had enough of this horse manure about Anthony Rendon. He hurts his wrist. He tells the media, yeah, I don't speak English. And it's just like, it's not that you don't speak English. You speak money. And he's not making that money. He signed a $240 million contract. He has a worse contract now with the Angels than Pujols did. And everyone hated Albert. You guys have a good night before I go off the handle one more time.